And so we would assume that that's how that would work. Cynthia Frelund, everybody, NFL.com/Frelund. You can go to all her great writing. She just did something recently about the draft, and we wanted her on.
Why is
talk
your
about
beard
it.
already back?
What's that?
Why is your beard already back? You like shaved it like 5 minutes ago?
I know. I am testosterone. I'm a growing man.
Already the bearded back. I thought we were going to be no beard. Like, okay, keep going. I was expecting a completely different person.
You think I should shave every day?
No.
You think? No.
I like the beard. I think the beard's a good look.
Oh, that's nice to hear. You should see Sky's beard. His beard puts mine away, puts it to shame. It really, really does. Where is he at? There he is.
Wow. I mean, That's amazing.
I think if you got a name like Sky, you should have a facial expression or something that goes on with it. I want to talk to you about this mock draft because I like how you went about it. I like how you said this is how teams should draft to win now. Why aren't teams thinking like that all the time? Because we're talking about teams that are up one year and down the next. San Francisco loses everybody defensively. Why shouldn't you try to draft in each year's draft like you need more wins the next year that will get you to the top? Why aren't we seeing more of that?
Unfortunately, a lot of teams don't have that luxury for a couple reasons. First, they're often saddled with legacy salary cap situations, and especially this season with the cap going down, they're like screwed with these past contracts because they were written in a time when the quarterback market was X and they're still paying off or amortizing, their defensive end that is Y or a corner that is, Z. And then you actually see, like, for example, like the Arizona Cardinals, they had to overpay for JJ Watt. I think JJ Watt's a great player, but that's a lot for him because ultimately in a year when the cap's going down and you don't know if Larry Fitzgerald's coming back, it's going to be interesting to see. However, if they wanted him, in order to get him, they had to pay for that because they had other suitors in the marketplace. So, you're getting a free agent that's pretty hefty price tag. And ultimately, you have to make concessions elsewhere. So, it's not often that teams get the luxury of having to really be able to start from scratch, right? The Browns did that and they're sitting really pretty right now. They're in great shape in terms of cap and opportunity in this draft cycle. But other teams, look at the Saints. We don't even know what's going on with the Saints and they're over budget right now. So they're going to be a lot of cap casualties next week.
Yeah, that was something I want to ask you about. We saw the first real casualty down in Miami. $51 million contract just last year, and now gone after 1 year. I mean, what kind of surprises do you think we might see and hear over the next few days, where there were players you assumed was going to be on your roster next year, but might be out because of where the cap is and what kind of troubles they're in?
So I think if you have smart teams, you're actually going to use this as like a cleansing process, and you can reset a lot of what you have going on and get flush kind of all those bad contracts. I think you're going to see teams like for example, I would imagine the Green Bay Packers restructure Aaron Rodgers' contract to push more of his salary into the future so that they can go acquire more players for this season and what they kind of need. But it really does depend on the market, and it depends on, if the players are willing to do that. So you'll probably see restructuring in Dallas. Players tend to want to play in Dallas. So they have the luxury of, the leverage works in Dallas as a team's favor. But other teams, you won't see that. And you won't see a team being or a player being as kind to restructure in that situation. So I think you're going to see, I think the Saints are going to be one to watch because they're pretty cap strapped. I think it's going to be interesting to see what goes on. I think that the Chiefs might have some surprises too, because they need to kind of keep some things a little healthier with their defensive front. It'll be interesting to see some of the teams we think are very good, what happens with some of their players. Tampa Bay is another one. I'm interested to see what they're going to do on defense, who they're keeping, who they're not going to be able to keep.
By the way, you're the first guest ever on the Ryan D. Leaf Show, by the way.
What an honor.
Yeah, I figured as much. I figured that it was apropos in the off season. Let's get to your mock draft. I thought it was interesting because there's some on there that I would necessarily, and we're going to look mostly at the quarterbacks and what you're thinking there, but the first two picks in the draft are exactly how I would do it anyway. And
Oh, good.
talk to us about that a little bit and why you think the Jets are going to do what the Jets or the Jets would need to do this in this scenario.
It's funny because Mekhi Becton was actually a shining star for them last season when he was healthy and able to be on the field. And I say shining star because the rest of their O-line was hot garbage for the most part. And I understand that we saw, like at Oregon, Penei Sewell played left tackle, so you don't need to double up at that. But remember, there's right tackle, so you can bookend that to create a good opportunity for any quarterback. I think Jets fans want to see a different quarterback because Jets fans want to move on and they want to be good, and they don't remember maybe that they have a lot of needs. Like they don't have a secondary for the most part. I mean, it's not other than Marcus May, like scratch that whole thing and move on. And then they don't really have a pass rusher. Is CJ Mosley going to come back and play? Who knows? But they need someone to get after opposing quarterback. They've just got a lot of needs. So that tackle would be a really smart way to improve quickly. They don't have wide receivers either. Like they really need a lot of things to get better fast. So abandoning Sam Darnold, I guess that's one strategy, but I would say if I were advising them, they should probably trade down a little bit, get some draft equity and more picks. And then, they could probably get the tackle a little bit further down because other teams are going to panic and want to try to jump ahead for a quarterback. So they could be smart, and Joe Douglas could strategically do that. But, I think abandoning Sam Darnold it's not Sam's fault. They've got like kind of no one else to play. So that's an interesting one. And of course, Jacksonville could do whatever they want. I will say if Deshaun Watson were in the marketplace for them and you could say like, okay, if we hadn't heard everyone say Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson makes any team so much better just right away. So that would be of all the people who are rumored to be out there. But remember, the rules of my mock draft were only considered true free agents and draft eligible players. But to me, Deshaun Watson's by far and away the best person in the marketplace.
Well, talk to us about that a little bit, right? So, Andrew Brandt, who I go to a ton when it comes to the business of football, smart. And, he was pretty adamant about Carson Wentz and that cap number and moving on when the whole thing kind of started to shake out. And he stayed pretty solid on that, and it happened, right? They were willing to get rid of him, take off that huge contract, take on some bunch of dead money, and that exists with Deshaun. That it certainly exists with the likes of Russell Wilson. Is it going to come down to an act of desperation from some team offering up the kitchen sink and everything to Houston before they budge, or are they really not going to accept any possible offers? And this is just going to play out in a bigger pile of chaos.
So I think this one comes down to ego. I think Deshaun really truly wants to leave, and I think the brass there really truly believes that they can salvage this situation. And I don't think Deshaun's kidding, and I don't think he's being a diva or a baby or anything like that. I think he's truly offended by the situation. And I've had nothing but great interactions with him as a human being. So there's zero reason for me to believe that, any of this is for show, because he's a kid who wants to get out there and start working. So I think this is going to come down to when the Texans actually take a look in the mirror and say, okay, we got some things here that are making it really undesirable for players to want to be here. I mean, JJ Watt leaving was weird because JJ Watt was like pretty much Mr. Houston. I mean, after the hurricane, who in Houston didn't love JJ Watt? So, you're seeing a little bit of like it's coming apart at the seams a little bit. And I think maybe they'd be best served to really entertain opportunities to move forward right now. I think there's some teams that would be willing to give up quite a bit, and they could start anew as opposed to kind of foolishly thinking that they can salvage a situation that
you placed a quarterback in Denver, and Drew Lock has been, I like Drew Lock. I don't necessarily know what the fan base and inside the organization and John Elway think of Drew Lock, but is that a realistic expectation this year that this Broncos team could already be moving on from the quarterback they drafted so highly a few years ago?
It's interesting that Breaking Reaction was really interesting. It actually fits here too. 2-3 years for quarterbacks. Like the thing that they have in Denver is to me, a bit different than what's going on with the Jets and Sam Darnold, because Denver has a decent O-line. They could always be better, but their O-line's good. They have a decent situation at running back. They have great receivers. I mean, Jerry Jeudy was a really nice addition. He needs to catch the ball and not drop it. But he, apart from that, and remember, Cortland Sutton is coming back from being injured. So they have a lot of good pieces. To me, like Denver, of course, they need cornerbacks. They let go of AJ Boye, so we'll see what happens there. And Vic Fangio certainly knows what he's doing there when it comes to defense. But it seems to me like this is a situation where they are more like one player away than another one, right? Like, so Denver's got a good, Von Miller, he's still there. We've got, Bradley Chubb is awesome. You've got Justin Simmons. The versatile safeties are really important in the modern game. So ultimately, I think they're closer to being one player away, and Drew Lock has gotten enough of a chance behind an O-line with enough people to really maybe bring in a younger guy and give that guy a chance to kind of learn. When you look at a Zach Wilson or something from BYU, you and I have talked about off-platform throws, right? Like people who are able to not be perfectly set and get off a really accurate pass. That's an excellent and very important trait that a lot of these great quarterbacks share. Think of Deshaun Watson, think of Josh Allen, think of Patrick Mahomes. Like ain't nobody better than Patrick Mahomes on off-platform throws. So it's a good trait to have. And perhaps Drew Lock could be kind of more of a bridge towards the future. And then you get your future quarterback now. And you could pick up some of the people in free agency. It doesn't make sense for the Jets because they're not one player away. They're not 10 players away. They're like 40 players away.
They're the Jets. Charlie, you have a question for Cynthia, right? You wanted to ask.
I do. So I'm ready to talk NFL draft, and I see on your mock draft you got Trevor Lawrence 1, obviously, but I think you said you had Zach Wilson ahead of Justin Fields. Can you kind of explain that reasoning why you went that route?
Look, they have different traits, right? So, Zach Wilson off platform. So I put him slightly ahead because I told you the ability to have those off platform throws and that makes you great quicker in year one. Justin Fields, he has a longer term, like his projection, it's a little bit more of a learning curve because he runs a lot. And typically when you have the rushing ability, you put them behind a better offensive line for rushing. For the purpose of my mock, Taylor Moton, the right tackle for Carolina, hasn't been re-signed. It's a harder situation and it's less valuable to have a pure rushing quarterback because you got Christian McCaffrey there than it is in a Denver where they've got a really good run blocking O-line. They've got slightly better, their wide receivers are better than they were last year. And then you've got, so to me, it's kind of pick your poison. It's less about one being better than the other and more being a bit stylistically different, right? It's Justin Fields is like an awesome fit in a situation where he can use his legs and then develop more of the other aspects because his playbook wasn't as thick as some other quarterbacks.
For sure.
I think it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of funny that for whatever reason, we're hearing some of these analysts like our boy Move the Sticks there, Daniel Jeremiah and Dan Orlovsky talking about like, they're more open to the idea that all these quarterbacks are super talented that are coming into the league, but it matters where they go. And for whatever reason, we haven't heard that. And I've been like, for 20 years, I've been saying, hey, it matters where you go. Trevor Lawrence is probably the most talented quarterback in this thing, but he's going to Jacksonville. They've never had a Hall of Famer. You're going to a place where, Urban Meyer may give up and quit after 2 years because he's never had a sub 500 season in his career. It's important. And sometimes being the number one overall pick in comparison to being the guy, Patrick Mahomes, 10th down the line, it's better. Why are people just always all of a sudden coming to this realization?
See, I always get in trouble in the analytics community because I believe every quarterback's a system quarterback, every single one ever. There's no one quarterback that's never been not a system quarterback. It just depends if you have the players in that system or not, right? Like Lamar Jackson, if you put him on Detroit, he would not be Lamar Jackson. He would still be good, but he wouldn't be, maybe he wouldn't have been a league MVP. But right. And then the opportunity also to like really think about how the structure of your entire team and the salary, like your defense needs to be good too. You can have a great quarterback. And I mean, think of all those Saints teams that Drew Brees was passing for over 5,000 yards and their defense was just garbage. So they didn't win games. So at the end of the day, it's the sum of the parts has to all make sense. So it's just not, it's not about one, and it's not about, you know, like you can love Mac Jones. Great. If I'm the person architecting an offense for him, then I'll probably be better suited to do that. Right? Like Brian Daboll created the right situation for Josh Allen to succeed. It's not that Josh Allen would have been awesome in every single spot. It was the combination of the play caller, the other players on the team. I mean, Stephon Diggs made a gigantic difference in that one. Yeah. And also like what the skill set is for the entire quarterback or any position for that matter. Like I'm 5'6", I'm never dunking a basketball. If you ask me to dunk a basketball, like if you're expecting me to be drafted to dunk a basketball, like you're losing your mind. You're losing all your games. I mean, if you want me to hit a perimeter shot, I can't do that because I suck at basketball, but it's far more likely for me to do that. I could probably be taught to do that as opposed to dunk a basketball. So it's about expectations. Everyone's a system quarterback.
And I think that's hugely important, especially for you Buffalo Bills fans out there. The fact that you did so well this year and the season dragged on as long as it did, that Brian Daboll, did not end up in LA for the Chargers, because I really thought that's the place he was going to land, and it would have made Justin Herbert an even better commodity, I think. So, Cynthia Frelund, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Our first guest ever. It's going to go down in the history books. We'll probably clip it and just have it play on reel over and over on the YouTube channel.
I'm glad it's going to be a really fun Jeopardy like question one day, right?
Yeah.
Like what is, and then you'd be like, oh, that's amazing. So we're good.
It would be how's that preface? I was a Jeopardy question this year at the Tournament of Champions one. I was an answer to
what was the question? Was it?
It wasn't very kind. It was
beard thrower in 3 days.
This college quarterback was drafted alongside Peyton Manning. Their careers had much different outcomes.
Wow.
So it was I was an answer to Jeopardy, yes, but they didn't need the end part. They could have said this person was drafted alongside Peyton Manning. I'm pretty sure the guys that were in the Champions one could have got that. So it was a little backhanded.
Look, I think that's like a nice badge of honor, because how many people even get to be a Jeopardy question? And good, you laugh at it. Like, look at who you are. Like, that just goes to show, like, these Jeopardy writers, petty losers. Like, get a real job, you know?
Yeah, get a real job. Yeah, yeah. So, thanks for being with us. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Can't wait to. I wanted to get to more. We'll have you on again. I want to talk to you about
anytime.
With free agency starting this weekend. You're probably going to get pretty busy over the next week with all that. So.
All good. Anytime. You name it.
All right. Thanks.